Hello one and all, Jasper here, and if you've been a fan of mine for a while, you probably remember a little video I made about what my ideal Game of Thrones game would be. In the end, I went with a real-time strategy game, but a very close second was of course an RPG. And after sitting in my own thoughts, I began to think, how the hell would I tackle this if I had either $200 million gathering dust in my bank account, or if I had the time, skill, and dedication to make this myself? Well, let's get into that right now, starting with, of course, what kind of RPG should it be? You see, in the last video, it was easy to pick the kind of real-time strategy. For me, Total War is the pinnacle of large epic battles. No game that I am aware of comes close to the same scale and feeling. Yet, for an RPG, we have a lot of different ways we could play this, and I'll be honest, I don't know which one to go with. I contemplated turn-based, something like Baldur's Gate 3 or Dragon Quest, but these games would be better suited with many more options in combat, such as magic, special abilities, talents, and whatnot. This RPG I am making in my head wouldn't have a lot of that, considering Game of Thrones isn't a very magical setting, at least compared to other RPGs. So I think a more engaging, action-paced combat system works better. After all, imagine Baldur's Gate, but everyone is a fighter and you can only do basic attacks. The first combat style that came to my mind as a great option was a Souls-like. So that would be your Dark Souls, Elden Rings, and Bloodborne. A pretty solid translation to our Game of Thrones settings, just get rid of a lot of the magic and all that fucking rolling. I mean, for Christ's sake, nobody is going to roll around like that in an actual fight. Use the sidestep from Bloodborne, visually it's far better and a more realistic substitute. The other option was directional combat. This would be akin to your Bannerlords, For Honor, or Kingdom Come fighting styles. And this was the one I was leaning to the most, specifically the Kingdom Come version. It's probably one of, if not the most realistic medieval combat that could very easily translate to the Game of Thrones setting. Hell, I think there was a mod that was planned for the game that sadly was abandoned. Despite leaning towards the directional combat, I want to ask you all your opinions on the matter. So, I decided to put up a poll, and having most of you guys vote, and by most I mean like 40, it was clear directional combat takes the cake. I personally went back and forth between having it be first person like Kingdom Come, or third person like For Honor or Bannerlord, but in the end, I wanted it to be a little more realistic, so first person was the way to go in this case. Now, there might be some worries in regards to this kind of playstyle. For starters, how difficult it was to handle multiple opponents in Kingdom Come, and I will lay these worries to rest by telling you, these will still exist. Newsflash people, you're not going to be motherfucking Kratos in this series. You're generic Jensen, and I don't care how tough you are. Chances are if you're jumped by two guys, you're going to get fucked up. You could be as big and strong as Eddie Hall, and I bet you 5 guys will have a field day with you. So don't expect to be stacking up bodies like Luis Garvito. You are not going to be able to charge into a camp of 30 guys and just solo them all. Capiche? Okay, good. Now that we have that settled, let's go a little bit into the story and how I see this playing out and being told. Though, we still need to decide on a time. After all, the franchise has many points in its history that could be very interesting for a game like this. The Blackfire Rebellions, the Age of Heroes, the Andal invasions, and so many other options. At first, I thought the best option was starting roughly between the first and second book of the main series, or Season 1 and 2 for you show-only watchers. I was tempted to have you start in the dungeons of King's Landing, like any good Bethesda game, and have you picked up by Yoren. But when traveling north, the group is attacked, and in the chaos, this gives you the opportunity to go away and pretty much go wherever the fuck you want after that. You could continue north to join with Robb, or maybe you actually did want to join the Night's Watch, or say fuck it and join the Lannisters at Harrenhal. But I'll be honest, my brain was hurting to try to come up with some sort of bullshit reason and why you wouldn't end up just being some nameless mook on the front lines in a large battle, a meat shield. And I really wanted to avoid large battles. This kind of combat is good with a small group, but once you start getting close to 50 or more, it can become quite a bit of a mess. So instead, I decided to shrink things down immensely. So here is my plan B. When you start the game, the character creation screen is brought up and you can begin creating your character, starting of course with the race. Now, the obvious races are of course available: Firstmen, Andals, Rhoynar, Ironborn, Valyrians, but naturally, We also want some of the races and cultures of Essos, some Bravosi, Dothraki, Summer Islanders, Yiddish, and plenty of others. Now, depending on the race you pick, your starting stats will be different, but that's more so to give you an idea about the culture and a small head start in a particular build. For example, the Ironborn have more skill points in dual-wielding axes. Andals have higher sword and shield stats with a bonus to taking over territory that isn't theirs. Yiddish are more skilled with dexterity two-handed weapons and math. And finally, the Summer Islanders, who are more skilled with spears and have a 50% bonus to crime. To be clear, you don't have to pick a particular race if you want to min-max. No matter who you pick, you will be able to max out any skill that you choose to focus on. If you want to be a strength-built Dothraki in heavy armor or an Ironborn water dancer, it's completely viable. Be the special snowflake you think you are. Sex is a little bit tricky in this game. Haven't decided fully on anything. A part of me wants to make the hard mode if you choose to be a woman for obvious reasons. I mean, Westeros isn't exactly female-friendly after all. However, I'm sure there will be some ladies who would like to play as themselves and not have to deal with the patriarchy. But naturally, that could always make it gratifying in succeeding, kind of like beating a FromSoft game with all the odds stacked against you. I'll put it in the maybe box, and if this ever comes to fruition, which it fucking won't, I'll decide to keep it if I just want to ruin my life for no reason. Anyways, once you're finished creating your character, the ship you're on docks at King's Landing, and you hop off ready to make your fortune as a sellsword, and yes, you are a sellsword. I'm not going to waste resources in allowing you to be a boring baker or anything like that. This is a combat RPG, not Stardew Valley, alright? The day you land in King's Landing happens to be quite the special one though, as it's the Hand's tourney that is taking place at the time, and you have the option to join all the events, the joust, archery, and the melee, and these will serve as tutorials for the different forms of combat. And I know Westeros Melees is a battle royale with everyone on horses, but fuck that, it's silly, boots on the ground in this game. You do lose all of these though. Gregor Clegane knocks you off your horse in the joust, Thoros Amir spanks your ass with his flaming sword, and how do you pronounce this? Angui, whatever, embarrasses you at archery. I cannot have you win at these because the amount of gold dragons you'd get is fucking ridiculous. This was back when George R. R. Martin didn't know how the economy worked. Either way, after you do the tourney, or skip it, that's also an option, you are now let loose into the city of King's Landing, and starting here, it's all about building your reputation, and how you do that is up to you. If you want an honest living, you could guard a merchant station from thieves or gangs, serve as a bouncer to a tavern to keep the rowdy drunks calm, or sign up to the Gold Cloaks. Maybe you're not a character who wants to stay on the straight and narrow. Maybe you find being a thug and shaking down local shops more rewarding than protecting them. Maybe some of the locals are looking for a sellsword to end the life of someone who wronged them. And of course, if you are really corrupt, maybe you join the Gold Cloaks. Regardless of what kind of reputation you have, Eddard is eventually executed and chaos erupts, in not just the city, but the continent. And as a wise man once said, chaos is a ladder. Maybe you take advantage of the situation to increase your criminal empire. Perhaps you take part in Joffrey's Name Day tourney to make a name for yourself and catch the eye of a noble who might employ you. No matter what you choose to do, since your name holds more weight, some of the political powers take notice of you, such as Tyrion and Cersei, especially if you are a member of the Gold Cloaks. Maybe your corrupt reputation and friendship with Janos Slynt results in Tyrion trying to send you to the wall, forcing you to go to Cersei for protection. Or maybe your stand-up and honorable ways actually cause Tyrion to promote you after he sends Janos and his goons to the wall. But this is all about if you join the Gold Cloaks. Maybe you're staying on your own and word goes around that you know how to swing a blade better than most. You get a visit from Bronn, who lets you know the new Hand of the King is looking for strong arms to keep him safe. Hell, maybe you did so well at Joffrey's tourney, he takes notice of you and decides to take you under his command. Maybe before any of that though, you've already had a few dealings with Peter Baelish, and he asks you to serve as a spy for him no matter who you're employed by. Speaking of chaos, remember the riots in King's Landing that take place? Well, maybe your choices have led you to be a protector of one of the Lannisters. though I find the opportunity of being the cause of the riot more interesting, using the chaos to kill Lannister soldiers and gold cloaks with the intention of stripping them bare to arm your own followers, or to try and rob any of the ladies who are adorned with fine jewelry. I'm sure Cersei's crown could fetch a pretty copper if you found the right buyer. Either way though, eventually the famous Battle of Blackwater will take place, and of course, your sword will be drafted to defend the innocent people of King's Landing. Maybe you protect the walls, firing arrows at the attacking army and cutting down the ones who try to scale the wall with ladders. Maybe you stand side by side with Sandor and sally out of the gates to face the enemy head on. And of course, you will have the opportunity to ride out with Tyrion in a last charge to dispel the enemy. Maybe during the chaos of the battle, you take the opportunity to try and kill Tyrion on the orders of his sister. Maybe you're the one who saves him and protects his body as the Lannister and Tyrell army rides in to save you from the invading Baratheons. Regardless of whatever decision that ends up being, suddenly, King's Landing has a lot more players. With Tywin and the Tyrells becoming a proper force, do you turn your cloak and abandon who you were with to shag up with one of the new faces? And I don't know if I was clear at the beginning, but honestly, I want being a good person to be the hardest way to play this game. Being lawful good, you're making tons of enemies for yourself and very few allies. But this would be a strong moment where being a goody two-shoes would save you, as that would make it so much easier to jump onto the Tyrell ship and build up a reputation with them. Much easier than if, for example, you were known as one of Cersei's lapdogs for several months. Who knows? After both the riot of King's Landing and the Battle of Blackwater, 2 members of the Kingsguard are dead. A wonderful opportunity to have your shoulders covered in the white silk. Fuck. I can already picture a cool scene where Jaime comments on your skills, and depending on how high your combat is, he will either be dumbfounded at how you were named to the Kingsguard, or find your skills adequate. Hell, the more I type this out, the more I'm falling in love with what could be crafted and all the potential. You could defend Marjorie from the Faith when they come to arrest her on false accusations. You could be champion in the trial by combat for Tyrion. You could volunteer and face down the mountain that rides, slaying the massive man and proving Tyrion's innocence. Or perhaps Cersei, after trusting you for so long, names you her champion. If that were to happen, who would you fight? Oberyn may not volunteer since you're not Gregor. Bronn is up in the air, so maybe you would have to face Tyrion himself, killing him in front of everyone. Or, more likely, Jaime would just break him out of jail a little bit sooner than he does in the books. Oh man, I could keep talking about this for hours, but I have to remember my editors are paid by the minute, so I should probably wrap this up. With that said, what do you all think? Do you like my idea for a Game of Thrones RPG, or do you think there's a better way to go about it? A better game style, a better setting. Instead of King's Landing, make all of Westeros the open world. Open up options to join Robb Stark, Stannis Baratheon, or even the fan favorite Balon Greyjoy. I would love to hear all of your thoughts down below. Until then, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.